shoulder to shoulder. There we go. Get real tight. Perfect.
Well, good morning. I'd like to first start by welcoming everyone here to Newport News. Anyway, we're in the city of Norfolk today. I get to fill in for my good chief, Mark Talbot. So first of all, welcome. I want to thank Slover Library for hosting us today. We're also here with Attorney General Jason Miyares, Speaker Don Scott, and Senator Danny Diggs. And again, I would just like to welcome everyone here as we celebrate and set forth Operation Ceasefire. This is a collaborative between our federal, state, local law enforcement and prosecutors, but the most important asset we have is our communities that will play a huge role in reducing and addressing violence, particularly gun violence in our communities. So thank you for being here today. This time I'll turn it over to Attorney General Jason Miyares.
Thank you. Good morning. It is fantastic to be here in my home area, the 757. I want to personally thank some of the extraordinary people that have traveled a long way also to be here. We're here in Norfolk, but this has really been in collaboration in so many different areas around the state. And so I want to personally thank them for making the trip. Obviously, and thanking Speaker Scott as well. Operation Ceasefire has been an initiative that was launched to reduce gun violence, and it's like a three-legged stool: prevention, intervention, and prosecution. And I want to emphasize that. It's not just prosecution. It's been prevention and intervention as well as prosecution. And when we launched this, we had 13 of our highest crime cities that we wanted to focus our resources in: Richmond, Petersburg, Norfolk, Hampton, Newport News, Portsmouth, Chesapeake, Roanoke, Emporia, Lynchburg, Martinsville, Danville, and Hopewell. I want to first thank Speaker Scott for continuing to fund this initiative in the General Assembly as well. We have representatives to show that this has been, from the beginning, it's been a bipartisan effort. I also want to thank Governor Youngkin for being an incredible partner in this initiative, and his Deputy Secretary of Public Safety, Lisa Walbert, and DCJS Director Jackson Miller, that were instrumental in so much of the grant funding on behalf of the administration, and their role has been simply incredible as well in this partnership. It's why I'm joined here for people from so many different areas from around the Commonwealth. Police chiefs from Martinsville, from Lynchburg, from Norfolk, Newport News, our Commonwealth's Attorney, Howard Gwynn, in Newport News, our Hampton Commonwealth's Attorney Anton Bell. Obviously, you just heard from Police Chief Drew in Newport News, our Hampton Police Chief Jimmy Wildman, our Chesapeake Police Chief Mark Seletsky, and our Portsmouth Assistant Chief Nishala Nelson. They are here today because they have seen that when you have this effort of prevention and intervention and prosecution, you could see that crime goes down. And so we're so grateful. What we saw and what we heard leading up to ceasefire is that it has been very, very hard on so many Virginians coming in the post-pandemic world, right? We were socially isolated for 18 months, and so many individuals that we have worked with, particularly in gang prevention and intervention, have said some of the best outlets for our youth to not go into gang activity are after-school sports, after-school church activities, after-school school activities, and these were shut down. And so we got through the pandemic, and a lot of our kids were hurting, candidly. And so we went to work, and we started talking to stakeholders in the communities of what are the programs, what are the things that we want to work with. And a lot of it is you have to do intervention and prevention. You have to invest in these young men's lives to show them not to go down a separate path, but a path of hope and dignity. And so that's why we worked with groups like Real Life Community Center from Hopewell that's here today, Catch More Kids in Newport News that stresses conflict resolution and at-risk youth engagement. Big Homies in Portsmouth, which focuses on after-school programs and mentoring our youth. The Life Coach Academy in Richmond, which pushes after-school programs and also mentoring so many young people. The Good Gangs organization in Lynchburg, so many folks that do incredible work in anti-violence work in Lynchburg, started by Dr. Owen Cardwell. New Life for Youth, also in Richmond, that deals with both addiction recovery and gang prevention. And so we really wanted to put resources into our young people in intervention and prevention. And then we have Virginia Rules, which is a fantastic curriculum that's in our schools that really teaches basics of good citizenships. And I'm a big believer, and I tell my staff all the time, the best way to fight bad information is with good information. Get the right information to our young people so they can make wiser choices. And we also have 3 statewide ceasefire coordinators who all they do is they work with our communities to execute group violence intervention strategies. And so that's so important to emphasize. That's been part of this holistic approach from the beginning of how we tackle the gang violence and the gun violence that's been happening in Virginia. But obviously part of that is also prosecution. 7 prosecutors that are designated to prosecute the repeat violent and gun violence that we see in some of these communities. And so this collaborative approach of intervention, prevention, and prosecution has led to real substantive reductions of crime. 12 of our 13 ceasefire cities saw a reduction in crime. Newport News has seen a 63% drop in murders this year to date. So from Chesapeake, Norfolk, Portsmouth, Richmond, Petersburg, Martinsville, Lynchburg, Roanoke, Hopewell, we have seen a reduction in violent crime. Furthermore, over 10,000 illegal guns have been recovered in our 13 ceasefire cities. These are guns that are off our streets and out of our communities. In our 2023, our ceasefire cities that we targeted saw 225 less violent crimes in that year. Norfolk saw a 26% reduction in violent crime, Portsmouth close to a 10% reduction in violent crime, and close to a 20% reduction in murders. Petersburg saw close to a 20% reduction of violent crime as well. So the statistics have shown that this is working. Lynchburg saw a 50% decrease in homicide. And so this combination, again, of prevention, intervention, and prosecution has shown real substantive results so far, a little over a year after we launched Operation Ceasefire. And this shows what happens when you have a partnership. These special prosecutors is a partnership with our federal partners with the Department of Justice. They are cross-designated from our office, but they actually work in the U.S. Attorney's Office in these areas. So they're going to federal court. That's always a helpful moment when you get to call up the local U.S. attorney and say, I want to bring some people to your office, and the state of Virginia is paying for it. They never want to turn that down, but they've been great partners with us as well, working with our group violence coordinators as well. That's been a great partnership. And so this is what happens when you have partners with the state, and I'm very appreciative of Colonel Settle being here from the Virginia State Police. Our state partners, this is a cooperation of our local partners, both our local police chiefs, our local Commonwealth attorneys that have been part of this, the General Assembly in a bipartisan effort with Speaker Sott willing to fund this initiative, obviously the governor for as well being such a champion of this. And so when we want to reduce violence in communities, this is really about in many ways, setting politics aside and saying we're going to do and push the programs that are working. I also have to personally commend as well an idea that began with Speaker Scott that the governor put in his budget last year, which is a victim witness protection program, the first of its kind, because a lot of victims of crime were candidly afraid to testify. And this is a way to make sure that they felt protected if they needed to get out of town and get separate housing, because a prosecutor will tell you they don't have a case if they don't have somebody that feels safe in a safe space enough to be willing to testify. So I want to also thank Speaker Scott for both being supportive of that initiative and also the governor for including that as one of his budget priorities. And so I think this is what happens when you see things work. We oftentimes turn on the news and we particularly if you see what's going on in Washington, thinks, well, there's just too much dysfunction, things aren't working. Well, this is what happens when federal, state, and local partners get together and work. And so I want to thank them. And so I'd like to turn this over now to the esteemed Speaker of the House of Delegates, Don Scott.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you, everyone, for being here. And as Jason said, this issue is a bipartisan issue. It's a very serious issue. We don't take it lightly. One of the things that I learned in 2020, when we were going through the pandemic, is that our communities were suffering. Every day when you watch the news, you saw going on your screen underneath, millions dead, millions dying from COVID. And we have some mental health issues and mental health challenges based on COVID. We still, I don't think, have fully recovered. I think a lot of the impact on our youth and being away from school so long hurt us. We know that. Now that we know better, we can do better. And I think we have an obligation not only to fund Operation Ceasefire and other programs like this, but we also have a continuing and ongoing duty to make sure that we put our resources in our behavioral health care, and that's what we did in this budget. I'm proud to be here standing with the AG and law enforcement and our Commonwealth attorneys who have to do the hard work every day. One of the things that I learned when during that time frame and in 2021, if you were paying attention, there were communities trying to reduce the impact or the presence of law enforcement. And I went to a Civic League meeting with some elderly folks one time, and they said, are you trying to reduce, the phrase defund? Are you trying to defund? And I'm like, no, we're trying to fund. And so I want to make sure we get that message across, because people in the most impacted communities, they want to see the presence of law enforcement there. When people say that, they don't understand, especially in Black and African American communities. A lot of times there are stereotypes. That's not true. We want to be safe too. And so I want to make sure that is why this budget, this biennium, will have $22 million to fund this program over the next 2 years, about $11.3 million per year to continue to make sure that we get guns out of the hands of folks that shouldn't have them, and make sure that we do everything that we can to keep our citizens safe. One of the things that I'm most proud of, when I first put in a budget amendment to fund our witness protection program, I was talking to Commonwealth attorneys across this region who were saying that they could not make people feel safe. People would not come forward because they knew that if they had come forward and they got to go back to that same community, that they would not be safe. That's a common sense fix. So what we did was we put money in the budget to make sure that we funded our witness protection program, to give folks the opportunity, if they needed to relocate, to get the resources they needed if they needed to, even if it was temporarily, so that they would be able to help us solve some of this problem. We know that local law enforcement works, and we know that local law enforcement can't work without community engagement. The solutions come from within the community. They don't come from outside, they come from within. That's why I'm so grateful that the state and the Commonwealth of Virginia, in partnership, in a bipartisan way, is funding to make sure that we get these community-based organizations who know the kids in the community, that know the adults in the community. When I talk to my local chief, Chief Jenkins in Portsmouth, they know who the bad actors are. It's usually a few people that have infected the entire community. And so what we need to do is make sure that we make people feel safe so they can come forward to deal with those issues. Working across party lines, we were able to fund Operation Ceasefire. And here in Portsmouth, I know this is going all over, but in Portsmouth, we saw an 8% reduction in crime. And I think there is a way to continue to be smart in how we do public safety, but be fair in our criminal justice system. I think you can do both. And I think we've done that, and hold people accountable where we can, and give people the opportunity to move forward also where we can. And I think that's what we've been able to do. And I'm grateful that the Attorney General and the Governor support that vision of doing both things, being smart on public safety, being smart on justice, understanding that folks are going to come back in the community. The best way to keep kids from entering the gang, the best way to keep kids from getting in the justice system is through education. And our budget funds public education at the highest level ever. We're funding Pell Grants for higher education. We're doing those things that make it easier. Nobody wants to go and do any crime when they study. You know what I mean? It's hard to get somebody to do something wrong when they got a job and they're going to work every day. And so what we have an obligation, I think, to do is to continue to invest in workforce development, but also make sure that we're continuing to do what AG said, which is prevention, intervention, and prosecution. That all three work together. When folks know they're going to be held accountable, then they're unlikely to go do something. But if we get people ahead of time, and we have to start earlier. One of the things I like about this program is that we're funding people that are starting in elementary school, starting in middle school, because that's when these kids are being recruited. And I know we're focusing on some of the men, but it's also young ladies now that's getting involved with this gang involvement, and we have to do everything that we can to prevent it. I'm so grateful that we're seeing the success. I mean, the numbers don't lie. And so one of the things that we have to do is we have to continue to promote. We can't, this is not the time to turn our backs on what's working. This is the time that we double down and continue to prove these programs, fund those that are working, and if we need to shift resources from those that are not working, we need to do that. I'm grateful that we passed a lot of public safety legislation this past cycle to make sure that folks who, you know, one of the things that my chief told me is that the majority of these guns are being taken out of cars. People are breaking in cars because people are actually leaving guns on the front seat in plain view, and so people are breaking into those cars. So we passed legislation to hold people accountable for if you have a gun, or at least be accountable enough to report the gun. And if you don't, and that gun is used in a crime at a later time, then you have some accountability. And so that's what we're going to continue to do. We're going to continue to make sure that we help do everything that we can to empower our communities to help themselves. And so that's what I'm grateful for today, and I hope that we'll continue to work in partnership with the AG, our Commonwealth Attorney, and our law enforcement. Thank you. And I think the MC will come back here in a moment.
And I think we're going to hear next from Newport News Commonwealth Attorney Howard Gwynn.
Good morning. Now, everybody in here should be smiling this morning because it's a great day. So anybody that's frowning now, please put a smile on your face. First of all, let me say that it is an honor and a privilege to be here today. My name is Howard Gwynn, and it is my privilege to be the Commonwealth Attorney for the City of Newport News. The first thing I want to do is thank Attorney General Miyares, because programs like this require vision, and he had a vision, and that vision has come to reality. Also want to thank Speaker Scott, because no matter how much of a vision our Attorney General had, without money, that vision is not going to come true. So thank you for the money. One of the things that we talk about all the time in terms of affecting crime in our communities are prevention, intervention, and law enforcement. And prevention and intervention are critically important. Some years ago, I had the privilege of hearing Father Gregory Boyle, who's been involved in gang prevention since the 60s in LA. And he started this program called Homeboy Industries. And one of the things that he said that really resonated with me is, I've never seen a hopeful child join a gang. Let me repeat that. I've never seen a hopeful child join a gang. Also, he said, if you want to understand gang members, you need to understand what they're running from, not what they're running to. Again, you need to understand what they're running from, not what they're running to. And so prevention and intervention is an important piece to give children in our communities hope, because with hope, they believe they can succeed. Now, law enforcement, when we talk about law enforcement, I've been doing this for 41 years now. And when we talk about law enforcement, it's always the police. It's never prosecutors. And so I am happy, Mr. Miyares, that you now have included us in the picture, because we play a critically important role. I was incredibly happy when Newport News was selected as one of our jurisdictions. Now, that's a double-edged sword. You're selected because your crime stands out. But I think we're also selected because we have a tremendous police department led by Steve Drew. Two of our assistant chiefs are here, and I'm very grateful for them. So we have an incredible police department, which makes us suitable for this program. We have a long-standing history of engaging our U.S. Attorney's Office, and we have a tremendous partnership and work very closely together. We also have a community, as Senator Scott said. I come from the African-American community in Newport News, and folk want to be safe, quiet as it's kept, because a lot of the crime that takes place in Newport News takes place in my community. And my folks want to be safe too, but they want us to treat people fairly. They want us to treat people with respect. They want us to treat people like human beings, and in Newport News, I know in Hampton as well, we do that. And I'm proud to be in partnership with my good friend Anton Bell, who does an amazing job in the city of Hampton. So buckle up, get ready. The jurisdictions that Mr. Miyares named are going to be safer than they've ever been. Thank you.
Now we're going to take a few questions on ceasefire so fire away.
Can you talk a little bit more about the intervention process? You talk about, prevention with the number of, community programs and programs. Can you talk a little bit more about the intervention process?
Right. A lot of it, obviously, some of it's in our schools with Virginia rules. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a gentleman that had gone out of the gang lifestyle in Lynchburg. And he said, the one thing when you're a teenager that you want above all else is a sense of belonging. And so many get caught up in the gang lifestyle. That's really what it's a sense of belonging. I thought the remarks by Mr. Gwynn about nobody is joining a gang if they have hope. But that's a lot of it. And so, again, I think Speaker Scott was correct. We're still dealing with the aftershocks of COVID. It was like squeezing the air on a balloon. Took pretty drastic steps to defeat a virus, but now we're seeing some of the aftershocks. And so young men, particularly, get a sense of belonging oftentimes from being part of it, either community, either after-school activities, after-school sports. And a lot of them got to the gang lifestyle, as this gentleman shared with me, almost by accident. It was a sense of belonging. It was a sense of connection. We want to make sure they get that connection in the right areas. And that's why we work with, Real Life Community Center and Catchport Kids and Big Homies and so many of these others to have individuals that can mentor and invest in these kids and also talk about their own life experiences. Whenever I speak at a high school, I say the only thing age gives you is perspective. When we say wisdom, I like to say there's two ways to learn from mistakes. Either you learn from them yourself or you learn them from somebody else. And a lot of these individuals are individuals that have had some hard lessons they've learned in life that they share with these young people so they learn from their own mistakes, but also mentoring them on the right path. And so I think that's been a huge part of what this has been, intervention and prevention, working with, providing grant money as part of ceasefire to these different proven entities that have a proven track record of investing and mentoring young people so it can be a force multiplier. And I think everybody in law enforcement would tell you they'd much rather see an individual being invested in this regards than having to deal with them then on the other side in a courtroom. And that was always the idea of ceasefire, is that three-legged stool of intervention, prevention, and then prosecution, obviously. And I think the results have been very proven very effective so far.
I want to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm always going to probably talk about the money, because follow the money, because that'll tell you where your heart is. We put $43 million to increase our school resource officers. We have to have people. To me, that's the beginning of counterintelligence, to understand what's happening in our schools with our kids. I know y'all know this. I have a 15-year-old daughter. Social media is the issue that we're having. The best law enforcement folks are tracking social media. They're tracking Instagram. They're doing the intervention that you're talking about. That's where it begins, because a lot of this stuff and a lot of recruiting, a lot of the actions that people are doing to get more gain more popularity, gain street cred, is happening on social media. If you're not monitoring social media, then you're not doing this job correctly. So when you talk about intervention, that's where it starts. I can't tell you how many kids I know that get in trouble for doing stuff on social media that they shouldn't do. And it's not even hard to catch them. I mean, it's dumb. And so a lot of the stuff that they're doing, the law enforcement knows it. It's there. We just have to get parents and schools the resources and tools that they need so they can intervene early. A lot of times this stuff begins, you see it in social media, you see it in other places, and by the time we act, it's already too late. If we can get there as soon as we see it, I think that's one of the things that's going on. When you talk about intervention, I think it has to begin and end with social media.
Yeah, and Speaker Spot touched on something that I'm excited about that we're rolling out, which is technology. You have to leverage it. So it's so effective now that if, say, there is an incident of gun violence in even down to a certain square city block in a neighborhood, the technology now exists that apparently one thing that we were getting back is it's common in gang activity for people to upload on social media accounts, say on YouTube, diss videos. Well, you can actually zero that in and create a short, if you've ever, I assume everybody watches YouTube, the short commercials, where it's actually a 15-second video that's attached to the diss video saying, listen, if you use a gun in a commission of a crime, it's more time, right? And so you can also have a very targeted mention, that's prevention, warning people of the consequences as well. And so that's the type of also part of Ceasefire is leveraging technology to be very, very pinpoint and get that messaging out. So leave the gun at home. Don't use that to resolve the conflict. And so I think that's a huge part as well. But it's holistic, and I can't emphasize enough. This whole approach from the beginning has been this idea that it's going to be a holistic approach. You can't just prosecute your way out of it. You have to invest in young people as well and also get the right information at the right time to the right people. And we're going to be leveraging as much as we can and experimenting to continue to see these numbers go down.
Are there any plans to expand the list of designated ceasefire cities?
We'll see what the final budget is. I'm not against that. We had some other localities that have expressed interest, but our goal is to really invest in these 13 that were have been particularly hit by gun violence the last several years, and really be focused on this. We are obviously open moving forward to whatever the General Assembly and the governor decides, but so far this has been an effective program, and we're going to stick with it.
And in terms of special prosecutors, how is it decided which cases they'll be working on? Is it repeat offenders, people who can, come back to the community and cause more havoc or impact more people? How's that certain?
Well, it's overwhelmingly the small subset of repeat violent offenders that are then using guns in a commission of crimes. And so what happens is we have these coordinators that also work with our U.S. Attorney's Office and state and local. And that's the one thing that I've realized coming into office is I wanted to see enhanced communication between the different state, local, and federal, which we've achieved. We have great partners with our federal agencies as well. And so what that means is it gives Howard Glenn and Anton Bell and our other partner Commonwealth's attorneys the option of saying, this is a case, we're going to work with our federal partners on this. And so it may be a prosecution in a federal court, but it's because they're partnering with our federal partners, and it may be technically in federal court, but they've been great partners as well. And so it's been a collaboration. One thing you find in law enforcement, unfortunately, sometimes there's people put up barriers or they want to protect their turf. And I think we've done a very good job. I want to, again, appreciate Colonel Settle for this. We've done a very good job making sure that there's no turf battles here with state, local, and federal, that everybody's working together towards the same goal.
Sir, I have a question. Might be better for the speaker, but can you talk more about the grant program? Who might be eligible? Can you give an example of some organization that has used that?
Well, I mean, Good Gangs is a great organization out of Lynchburg. That they send young men. They train them to go into the communities. Oftentimes, on a hot summer night, they will be in the community, and they have designated shirts. Everybody knows who they are, and they're there to de-escalate. That's been a great group that we have worked with. New Life for Youth in Richmond, another great group that we have worked with dealing with addiction recovery and bringing in gang prevention, having after-school activities for young people. We're starting the conversation. Great group out of Portsmouth, Big Homies, also does after-school programming and mentoring. Catch More Kids in Newport News really emphasizes conflict resolution. And so all of these, we have a process in place through the grant funding that people apply, and this enables them to be force multipliers. To increase their budget, they can have more people doing more things in the more schools and more communities. And so those are just some of the different private entities that we work with, these kind of public-private partnerships that they've had proven results. They come to us, they've shown they have a proven track record, and we're able to then turbocharge that with grant money to have them be force multipliers on that.
And obviously, it seems like, with numbers down, things have been working, but in this coming year, are there any more other things that you want to implement in this program, or just keep it steady?
Well, the technology I mentioned on doing the targeted ads on the disc videos, I think that could have a real impact as well. So we want to continue to leverage technology. We're looking at always constant improvement, and we're looking at new groups that have come to us that said, hey, we want to be part of Ceasefire. We have this idea. And so there's going to be constant evaluation. And the reality is that by leveraging these entities that have a track record of success, then we could be that force multiplier of getting the right information to the right kids, investing in their lives, and giving them hope. So you're going to see constant leveraging of new technology and working with new groups that pop up. If we pop into another city, we're going to be asking, hey, what are the private entities that really have a proven track record of working with our at-risk youth? And so I think you're going to see this be a continued collaborative process moving forward.
Last question.
No? All right. Thank you all for getting the message out. And I really, again, want to appreciate those that have traveled. I know that our Lynchburg Police Chief, Ryan Zubin, and Martinsville Police Chief, Rob Fincher, probably get the award for traveling the farthest today. But it really shows that this is a statewide effort in so many different areas from around the state. But we're all committed to ending the scourge of violence in our cities. So thank you all. God bless you.